The high desert of New Mexico stretched endlessly in every direction, a vast expanse of red earth and scattered sage under an unforgiving sun. Here, where civilization seemed to forget its reach, Marcus Cole had built his sanctuary. 200 acres of solitude, a modest ranch house, and enough distance from his past to finally breathe. Or so he'd thought. At 58, Marcus looked every bit the weathered rancher. Sun-creased skin, calloused hands, and the kind of quiet demeanor that came from a man who'd said all he needed to say years ago. His neighbors knew him as the polite loner who kept to himself, raised a small herd of cattle, and occasionally helped fix a fence or pull a truck from the mud. What they didn't know was that Marcus Cole wasn't his real name. For 32 years, he had been known only by his call sign, Reaper. The morning started like any other. Marcus was up before dawn, brewing coffee in his kitchen while his Belgian Malinois Cairo stretched on the worn wooden floor. Through the window, the first rays of sunlight painted the Sangre de Cristo mountains in shades of crimson and gold. It was the kind of peace he'd dreamed about during those endless nights in Fallujah, in Mogadishu, in places so classified they didn't appear on any map. Cairo's ears suddenly perked up, his body going rigid. Marcus set down his coffee cup, his own senses sharpening instantly. In the distance, he heard what his dog had already detected. Vehicles. Multiple vehicles. Moving fast. He moved to the window, staying to the side, and watched as 3 dusty Chevy Suburbans kicked up trails of red dirt along the desert road leading to his property. They weren't lost tourists. The way they moved, the spacing between vehicles, the speed. This was tactical. Marcus's mind, trained by decades of combat operations, began calculating immediately. 3 vehicles meant 9 to 12 hostiles, possibly more. The fact they were approaching in daylight suggested either extreme confidence or desperation. Neither boded well. He opened a drawer in his kitchen, pushing aside the typical clutter of pens and receipts, and pressed a hidden button. A panel in the wall slid open, revealing a compact safe. Inside were items that seemed at odds with the simple rancher lifestyle. A Sig Sauer P226, a tactical knife, a satellite phone, and a slim folder marked with faded government seals. The vehicles were closer now, turning off the main road onto his property. Marcus grabbed the satellite phone and sent a single coded message to a number he'd hoped never to use again. Then he slipped the pistol into his waistband, covered by his faded denim shirt, and walked out onto his porch. Cairo followed, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "Easy, boy," Marcus said quietly. "Let's see what they want." The 3 Suburbans pulled up in a semicircle in front of his house, engines running, dust settling around them like a curtain. For a long moment, nothing happened. Marcus stood on his porch, one hand resting casually on the railing, the other near his hip. He counted the silhouettes through the tinted windows. 11 men. Finally, the doors opened. They emerged like a coordinated unit, clearly trained, clearly dangerous. Most wore tactical pants and tight black t-shirts despite the morning chill. Several had visible tattoos creeping up their necks. But it was the man who stepped from the center vehicle who commanded attention. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with a shaved head and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite and broken several times. He wore expensive sunglasses and moved with the kind of authority that came from being the deadliest person in any room. Behind him, 2 men openly carried AR-15s, making no attempt to conceal them. "Marcus Cole," the man called out, his accent marking him as Mexican, his English perfect. "That's what the mailbox says," Marcus replied evenly. The man smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. He walked forward slowly, his men fanning out in a practiced formation. Marcus noted each position, calculating fields of fire, cover points, escape routes. Old instincts died hard. "My name is Diego Reyes," the man said, stopping at the base of Marcus's porch steps. "I represent certain business interests in the region. We have a proposition for you." Not interested in propositions, Marcus said. I like my life simple. Diego's smile widened. You haven't heard it yet. We're willing to pay you $3 million for your property. Cash. No questions. You take the money, you disappear. Everyone's happy. Marcus took a slow sip from the coffee cup he'd brought out with him. Property's not for sale. That's unfortunate, Diego said, removing his sunglasses. His eyes were cold, reptilian. Because we've already purchased the Jackson Ranch to your east, the Morrison property to your west, and the federal land to your south. Your little piece of paradise sits right in the middle of a very important corridor for us. Sounds like a personal problem, Marcus replied. One of the armed men took a step forward, raising his rifle slightly. Cairo's growl intensified, his haunches tensing. Marcus remained perfectly still, but something in his posture changed. A subtle shift that made Diego raise his hand, stopping his man. You're either very brave or very stupid, old man, Diego said. Do you know who we are? I can guess, Marcus said. Sinaloa? Los Zetas? Doesn't matter. The answer's still no. Diego's expression hardened. We are the Diablos Rojos cartel. We control everything from Juarez to Albuquerque. We move 500 kilos of product through this region every month. Your ranch sits on our primary distribution route. So let me be very clear. You will sell, or you will disappear. Those are your only options. Marcus set down his coffee cup on the porch railing with deliberate care. There's always a third option. Oh? Diego's hand moved to his hip, where a gold-plated pistol gleamed in the morning light. And what's that? You leave. Right now. Don't come back. The silence that followed was profound. Then Diego laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that was echoed by his men. You have 24 hours to reconsider. If you're still here tomorrow morning, we'll come back. And next time, we won't be asking. He turned to leave, then paused. I did some research on you, Marcus Cole. You appeared out of nowhere 15 years ago. Paid cash for this property. No history before that. No family. No friends. No past. He looked back over his shoulder. That tells me you're running from something. Maybe you're in witness protection. Maybe you're hiding from a bad divorce. I don't care. But it also tells me you're alone. Nobody's coming to help you. Marcus said nothing, watching as the cartel members returned to their vehicles. Diego was the last to leave, pointing 2 fingers at his own eyes, then at Marcus, a universal gesture. I'm watching you. The Suburbans roared away, leaving Marcus alone in a cloud of settling dust. Cairo whined softly, pressing against Marcus's leg. I know, buddy, Marcus said quietly. I know. He waited until the vehicles were completely out of sight before moving. Then he walked back inside, his mind already racing through scenarios and contingencies. They'd given him 24 hours. In his previous life, he could dismantle an entire terrorist cell in half that time. Marcus returned to the hidden safe and removed the folder. Inside were documents he hadn't looked at in over a decade. Commendations, after-action reports, photographs from a life he'd tried to leave behind. One photo showed a younger version of himself, leaner and harder, standing with a team of operators in front of a Black Hawk helicopter. The caption read, Task Force Reaper, Operation Silent Thunder, 17 confirmed neutralizations, 0 friendly casualties. There were more photos, more operations. Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, Colombia, Syria. Places where Marcus Cole, where Reaper, had conducted missions that would never be declassified. He'd been the tip of the spear, the ghost in the night, the last thing countless enemies had ever seen. But that was before the injury that ended his career, before the nightmares got too bad, before he decided that he'd had enough of killing even when it was necessary. He'd retired at 43, taken his military pension, and disappeared. The government had been happy to help him vanish. Witness protection protocols without the witness part. A new identity, a new life, a chance to be nobody. For 15 years, it had worked. Marcus picked up the satellite phone. It was already ringing. "Reaper," a gruff voice answered. "It's been a long time." "Hello, Dutch," Marcus said. Dutch Stevens had been his commanding officer, the only person outside the program who knew where he'd gone. "I need information on the Diablos Rojos cartel." "Why?" Dutch's tone shifted immediately. "All business." "What's happening?" Marcus gave him a brief rundown. Dutch listened without interrupting, a skill he'd perfected over decades of military service. "Christ, Marcus," Dutch said when he finished. "You know how dangerous these people are. They make the Zetas look like Boy Scouts. Their leader, Alejandro Vega, is a former Mexican Special Forces operator who went dark side. He runs his organization like a military operation. You're talking about over 200 soldiers, and that's just in the New Mexico territory. The guy who came to see me said his name was Diego Reyes. That's Vega's number 2, former Federale, completely ruthless. If he gave you 24 hours, he means it. Marcus, you need to leave. Now. We can get you relocated again." "No," Marcus said firmly. "I'm done running. This is my home." "Don't be stupid. This isn't like the old days. You can't just—" "Dutch, I need intel. Locations, personnel, capabilities. Can you help me or not?" There was a long pause. "You're really going to do this? One man against an entire cartel?" "I've faced worse odds. You were younger then. You had a team. So get me a team." Another pause, longer this time. "Most of the old crew is out, retired, desk jobs, some dead, but—" Dutch trailed off. "There might be a few who'd come running if Reaper called." "I'm not asking them to come here," Marcus said. "I just need support, intel, logistics, maybe extraction if things go sideways." "When things go sideways, you mean?" Dutch sighed. "All right, give me 6 hours. I'll see what I can put together. But Marcus, be careful. These aren't terrorists with AKs and RPGs. They're well-funded, well-trained, and they have 0 rules of engagement." "Neither do I. Not anymore." After hanging up, Marcus spent the next 2 hours preparing his property. To anyone watching, he was just doing routine ranch work, checking fences, moving equipment, tending to his cattle. But each movement was purposeful, strategic. He identified every possible approach to his house and marked them mentally. The long driveway from the main road, obvious and exposed. The dry creek bed on the eastern edge, covered approach but limited vehicle access. The ridgeline to the north, perfect for overwatch positions. The flat desert to the west. No cover, but that could work to his advantage. In his barn, behind a false wall, Marcus had built a small armory over the years. Nothing crazy. He wasn't paranoid, just prepared. He pulled out an M4 carbine, meticulously maintained and zeroed. A Remington 700 sniper rifle with a high-powered scope. A Mossberg 590 shotgun. Various pistols, including his old favorite, a Glock 19. Ammunition, body armor, night vision equipment, trip flares, and other tools of his former trade. He also had something more sophisticated, a portable surveillance system he'd acquired during his final mission. 4 wireless cameras with night vision and motion detection. By noon, they were strategically placed around his property, feeding Tutsi on monitors he'd hidden in his basement. The basement itself was Marcus's real preparation. When he'd built the house, he'd included a reinforced safe room beneath the main structure. Concrete walls, steel door, independent air supply, emergency exit tunnel. He'd told the contractors it was a storm shelter. In reality, it was a tactical operations center. By mid-afternoon, Dutch called back. "You've got 3 volunteers," he said. "Bishop is flying in from Virginia. She can provide drone reconnaissance and communication support. Tanner's driving up from Texas. He'll bring additional equipment and can serve as a secondary shooter if needed. And Chen, you remember Chen? He's actually in Albuquerque on business. He can be your eyes in the city, track cartel movements." Marcus felt a warmth spread through his chest. These were good people. People he'd trusted with his life countless times. "Tell them I said thank you. They said to tell you that you're an idiot," but they're coming anyway. Dutch paused. I'm also sending you a data package. Everything we have on Diablos Rojos. Organization structure, known locations, vehicle descriptions, personnel files. It's not official. I'm calling in a lot of favors here, but it's comprehensive. I owe you. You owe me nothing. Just try not to die, okay? I've already been to too many funerals. The data package arrived via encrypted email an hour later. Marcus printed everything and spread it across his kitchen table. His rancher's kitchen transformed into a military planning center, covered with satellite photos, organizational charts, and intelligence reports. Diablos Rojos was indeed sophisticated. Alejandro Vega, the leader, had built a hybrid organization, part military unit, part criminal enterprise. They used encrypted communications, counter-surveillance techniques, and tactical training for all members. Their territory stretched across 3 states, generating an estimated $200 million annually in drug trafficking, extortion, and human smuggling. Diego Reyes, the man who'd visited Marcus, was Vega's enforcer, former Mexican federal police suspected in the murders of at least 30 people, including 2 American DEA agents. Extremely dangerous. But Marcus also saw weaknesses. The organization was hierarchical. Take out the leadership and the structure would collapse. They relied heavily on their reputation for extreme violence, which meant they often underestimated opponents. And despite their military training, they'd grown comfortable, sloppy. They were used to terrorizing civilians, not fighting someone who could fight back. As sunset painted the desert in shades of orange and purple, Marcus received confirmation that Bishop had landed in Santa Fe and was securing equipment. Tanner was 4 hours out. Chen had already identified 3 cartel safe houses in Albuquerque and was tracking communications. Marcus prepared a simple dinner, grilled steak and vegetables, and ate on his porch, watching the sun disappear behind the mountains. Cairo sat beside him, alert and watchful. The dog knew something was coming. Animals always knew. The night was clear and cold, stars emerging in impossible numbers across the dark sky. Marcus remembered nights like this in Afghanistan, in Iraq, waiting for dawn and the mission ahead. The familiar pre-combat mixture of calm and readiness settled over him like an old coat. Around 2 a.m., his surveillance cameras picked up movement. A single vehicle driving slowly past his property with its lights off. Reconnaissance. They were watching, confirming he was still there, probably looking for any signs of law enforcement involvement. Marcus smiled grimly. Let them look. They'd see exactly what he wanted them to see. A lone old man, way out of his depth, probably packing his bags right now. At 6 a.m., Bishop's voice came through on the encrypted radio Marcus had set up in his basement. Reaper, this is Overwatch. I'm in position with full eyes on your location. Drone is operational. Copy, Overwatch, Marcus replied. It felt strange using his old call sign after so many years, but also somehow right. Status? I've got 3 separate vehicle groups converging on your position. ETA approximately 2 hours. Total count. 8 vehicles, estimated 30 vans, 35 hostiles. They're coming heavy, Reaper. I'm seeing assault rifles, what looks like a belt-fed weapon, maybe even an RPG. Any sign of local law enforcement? Negative. Looks like they've been bought off or warned away. You're on your own out there. Story of my life, Marcus said. Tanner. Rolling up now. Tanner's voice crackled over the radio. Be there in 30 minutes. Brought you some party favors. Chen checked in from Albuquerque. Reaper, I've confirmed Alejandro Vega is personally overseeing this operation. He's at a command post about 40 miles from your location. Diego Reyes is leading the assault team. They're expecting 0 resistance. Then let's not disappoint them, Marcus said. He spent the next 30 minutes making final preparations. Tanner arrived with a pickup truck full of equipment, additional ammunition, claymore mines, smoke grenades, and a few surprises that made Marcus raise an eyebrow. Where the hell did you get C4? Marcus asked. Tanner grinned. You don't want to know. Where do you want it? Together they set up defensive positions around the property. The claymores went along the most likely approach routes, carefully concealed and remotely detonated. The C4 was placed in two strategic locations, one in the barn, one near the propane tank. Not to use unless absolutely necessary, but good to have options. Marcus sent Tanner to a ridge position about half a mile away with the sniper rifle. Bishop remained mobile with her drone, providing real-time intelligence. Chen would monitor cartel communications and warn of any reinforcements. At 8:47 a.m., right on schedule, the first vehicles appeared on the horizon. Marcus stood on his porch just as he had the day before. Cairo was safely locked in the reinforced basement. His M4 was leaning against the wall just inside the door, loaded and ready. His body armor was concealed under a loose flannel shirt. And his mind was clear, focused, back in the zone he'd occupied for 3 decades. The 8 vehicles formed a loose convoy, kicking up massive dust trails as they approached. They weren't trying to be subtle this time. This was a show of force, meant to intimidate. Diego Reyes stepped out of the lead vehicle, followed by at least 30 armed men. They spread out in a professional formation, covering all angles, weapons at the ready. This time, they weren't asking. "Mr. Cole," Diego called out, his voice amplified by a megaphone. "Your 24 hours are up. We gave you a chance. Now you leave in a body bag and we take what's ours." Marcus said nothing, watching as they advanced. "No smart remarks today," Diego continued. "No brave speeches." He laughed. "Good. You've finally realized how fucked you are. Men, burn everything. If you find him, make it slow. Let's send a message to anyone else who thinks about saying no to us." The cartel soldiers began to advance, weapons raised. Some pulled out gasoline cans and Molotov cocktails. They were maybe 50 yards from the house when Marcus finally moved. He lifted his hand to his ear, activating his radio. One word: execute. The desert erupted. The first Claymore mine detonated on the eastern approach, catching 4 men in a devastating spray of ball bearings. Before the echo faded, a second mine went off to the west. Tanner's rifle barked from the ridge, and the man carrying the belt-fed weapon dropped with a precision headshot. Chaos exploded among the cartel forces as they scrambled for cover, trying to locate the threats. They'd expected an old man with maybe a hunting rifle. Instead, they'd walked into a professionally prepared kill zone. Marcus grabbed his M4 and moved through his house with practiced efficiency, using prepared firing positions. He dropped 2 men trying to flank around the north side, then moved to a different window as return fire shredded his previous position. "Reaper, you've got a team trying to circle around through the creek bed," Bishop's voice came through his earpiece. "Copy. Tanner." "I see them." 3 quick shots. Threat neutralized. Diego Reyes was shouting orders, trying to regain control of his men. He was good. Marcus had to admit that. Within seconds, he'd organized a retreat to better cover and was coordinating a more organized assault, former Federale training showing through. "Smoke!" Diego yelled. Canisters arced through the air, filling the area with thick gray clouds. Smart move, negating Marcus's range advantage and preparing for a close assault. The cartel soldiers began advancing through the smoke using proper infantry tactics. Marcus triggered the claymore he'd hidden near his propane tank, not to blow the tank, but to catch the advancing team. The explosion was massive, sending bodies flying. But it wasn't enough. There were still too many. "Reaper, you need to fall back," Bishop urged. "There are at least 20 still active, and they're preparing to storm the house." Marcus was already moving, grabbing his go-bag and heading for the basement. Just as he reached the stairs, automatic weapons fire ripped through his front door, tearing apart furniture and punching holes in the walls. He descended into his operations center, sealing the heavy door behind him. The cameras showed cartel members swarming into his house, searching room by room. Diego was directing them, careful and methodical. "Tanner, light them up," Marcus said calmly. From his position on the ridge, Tanner had a perfect view of the barn where several cartel vehicles were parked. His .50 caliber round struck the C4 charge Marcus had planted. The explosion was apocalyptic. The barn disintegrated in a ball of flame, the shockwave shattering windows in the house and knocking several men off their feet. 2 of the vehicles were completely destroyed, others damaged. The fireball rose hundreds of feet into the air, visible for miles. In the chaos, Marcus emerged from his emergency exit tunnel, coming up 50 yards from the house. He moved like a ghost through the smoke and confusion, his M4 barking in controlled bursts. 3 rounds, shift position, 3 more rounds. Every bullet found its mark. The cartel soldiers, already shaken by the explosion, found themselves under attack from a new direction. Their formation collapsed. Men scattered, some trying to return fire, others simply trying to survive. Marcus moved through them like death itself, fluid, precise, unstoppable. This was what he'd been trained for, what he'd perfected over 30 years of combat. Close quarters battle was an art form, and he was a master. Diego Reyes saw him coming. To his credit, the former federale didn't run. He raised his gold-plated pistol, firing rapidly. Marcus felt one round graze his shoulder, another spark off his body armor. He didn't slow down. They met in the open ground between the house and the burning barn. Diego was fast, well-trained, dangerous. In another life, they might have been on the same side, but not today. The fight was brief and brutal. Diego got off 3 shots before Marcus closed the distance. A savage strike disarmed him, followed by a combination that dropped the cartel enforcer to his knees. Marcus's knee came up, connecting with Diego's face, and the man collapsed. Breathing hard, Marcus scanned the area. Bodies littered his property. Vehicles burned. His house was shot to hell. His barn was gone. But he was alive, and the immediate threat was neutralized. Reaper. Status? Bishop's voice was urgent in his ear. Threat eliminated, Marcus replied. Tanner. All clear from my position. That was like old times, boss. Chen. Holy shit. Reaper. I'm monitoring cartel communications. They're in complete panic. Alejandro Vega just ordered a full retreat from New Mexico territory. He's pulling everyone back to Mexico. He thinks he's under attack by a joint DEA-FBI task force. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Then I guess we shouldn't correct him. But there was one loose end. Diego Reyes groaned, consciousness returning. Marcus stood over him, M4 pointed at his head. Please, Diego gasped, blood streaming from his broken nose. Don't kill me. I'll leave. We'll all leave. The territory is yours. I don't want territory, Marcus said quietly. I just want to be left alone. Then let me go. I'll tell Vega you're protected, that you're connected. He'll never bother you again. Marcus considered this. The logical move was to eliminate Diego. He was too dangerous, knew too much. But Marcus was tired of killing. That was why he'd retired in the first place. Listen carefully, Marcus said. You're going to deliver a message to Alejandro Vega. Tell him that this territory is off limits. Tell him what happened here today. Tell him that if he ever comes back, if any of his people ever come back, what happened today will look like a gentle warning compared to what comes next. Do you understand? Diego nodded frantically. Yes. Yes, I understand. Good. Marcus lowered his weapon slightly. Now get the fuck off my property. Diego stumbled to one of the few remaining vehicles and drove away, not looking back. Marcus watched until he disappeared from sight, then finally allowed himself to relax. The cleanup took 3 days. Bishop, Tanner, and Chen helped him clear the bodies. They'd arranged for them to be found far from Marcus's property, apparent casualties of a cartel war. The story would be that Diablos Rojos had suffered a major defeat at the hands of a rival organization, not a single retired operator, and his small support team. Marcus's house was damaged but repairable. His barn was gone, but he'd rebuild. The important thing was that he was still here, still had his sanctuary. On the 4th day, his 3 helpers prepared to leave. They gathered on what remained of Marcus's porch, drinking coffee as the sun rose over the desert. You know they might come back, Bishop said. Maybe not Diablos Rojos, but someone else eventually. Let them come, Marcus replied. I'm done running. Tanner grinned. Just like old times. Reaper against impossible odds. Not quite, Marcus said, looking at his friends. Old times, I had my team. Turns out I still do. Chen raised his coffee cup. Always, boss. You need us, you call. We'll come running. They left in a convoy of vehicles, dust trails marking their departure. Marcus stood with Cairo, watching them go, then turned to survey his property. There was work to be done. Repairs, rebuilding, returning to the quiet life he'd carved out for himself. But he no longer felt like he was hiding. He'd faced his past and his present. And he was still standing. The old skills hadn't faded. The training remained. And if trouble came calling again, well, Reaper would be ready. 3 weeks later, a FedEx package arrived at Marcus's ranch. Inside was a single newspaper clipping from a Mexican paper. The headline read, Diablos Rojos Cartel withdraws from U.S. territory. Leader cites unsustainable losses to government forces. Attached to it was a handwritten note in Spanish, Your territory, we won't forget. DR. Marcus smiled, filed the note away, and returned to fixing his fence. Cairo trotted beside him, tail wagging, the desert stretching out peacefully in all directions. Sometimes, he thought, the best victories were the ones where you got to go home afterward. And this desert, this ranch, this quiet life, this was finally home. Before we close, tell us in the comments, would you stand your ground like Marcus or take the money and run? And if this story resonated with you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow we have another incredible tale of courage, justice, and one person standing against impossible odds. Until then, stay strong, stay vigilant, and remember, never underestimate the quiet ones.